Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Alicia and I'm the owner of Alicia Be Creative. I'm back with another tutorial here, and this is another book themed design. I was so inspired by this vinyl for my Maestra creations, I had to put this on a cup. So of course everything I used in today's video will be listed and linked down in the description box down below. And that's enough for me. Let's go ahead and jump right into today's tutorial. Okay, so of course I have to start by showing you the Glinyl subscription box from my Maestra creations. So this was the box for the month of July. And so this one had a bunch of holographic fine glitters. I have not yet used the glitter yet, but I do have a couple ideas. I really think they look really pretty in some like snow globe cups. And then this was the vinyl for this month's subscription box. I've got some semi-transparent like mermaid vibes. I love this princess one, a teacher themed one, perfect for back to school. And as soon as I saw this book vinyl, I was like, this one I have to use. So if you haven't already, check out maestracreations.com to get yourself some of those items. They're all now available individually on the website. So I'm going to be prepping today a 35 ounce duo from Hog Tumblers. So the duos come with two lids. It comes with like the drinking spout for like a sports cup, but then it also comes with a traditional screw on lid as well, so that you're able to kind of interchange which lid you'd like to use for whatever you're going to be drinking that day. So we're going to prep this just as I would any other tumbler. I'm going to go ahead and sand down this tumbler, just removing any of the shine from the surface of the cup, and then I will wipe this down with a bit of 91% rubbing alcohol to clean off all of that sanding debris, and that way we can get this ready to be spray painted. I'm just going to start with a flat white spray paint on top of this to begin with, and then we're going to go ahead and get into really getting and applying all of the sort of elements that are going to go on this cup. So now that I have everything kind of ready to go, I wanted to show you some of the items that I'm going to be using. So of course I'm going to be using that vinyl, but I decided that today's tutorial is going to have another brushstroke design on it. So I'm just showing you the paints that I'm going to be using. And of course I will list all of these down in the description box as well. You don't need to grab these exact paints. You certainly can grab whatever paints you have. I like to use acrylic paints. Everything always works out quite well with acrylic paint. Please don't feel like you need to grab these exact ones. Use ones you already have on hand. So now that my cup is dry from spray painting, I'm going to go ahead and kind of get my cup sort of prepped and split in half. So we're going to do a half vinyl, half brushstroke style look. And so I put the lid back on my cup so that I could make sure that my lid is going to be in the center of the back and the front of the cup. So this is something you want to do anytime you're using a, split cup design. You want to make sure that if you have a top that isn't just a push lid, that you do put the top back on before you go to do any of your measuring onto the cup, because I have had times, and I'm sure we all have, right, where we forget to do that part. We do the entire cup and then we go to put the lid on and screw it on, and it's crooked and it doesn't look right with how the design is laid out. So definitely make sure that you add the lid back to your top before you start sort of measuring everything out. So I just kind of made a couple of lines just on either side of what was about the halfway point. I then just use a long piece of painter's tape to just sort of split the bottom in half and to determine sort of the front half and back half of the cup. So now I'm going to go ahead and take my vinyl and just measure it on that larger half that I've kind of, centered or sort of cut out, if you will, with the painter's tape. And I'm just going to cut a section of that vinyl to size that's going to fit on that half of the tumbler. So we're going to go ahead and get this applied just like we would a traditional vinyl wrap here. And so what I'm going to do is I'll just sort of peel the backing of this vinyl up and kind of fold about 1 inch to 1/2 inch on the back side back. And then I'll just adhere that 1/2 inch to 1 inch of vinyl right on top of my blue painter's tape line. I always go right over the tape line as opposed to right next to it, because I can always cut any of the excess vinyl that overlaps, and I always make sure to give myself just a little bit of wiggle room on either side of that section over the tape line to you know, just kind of ensure that in case things go a little bit crazy or wonky, that I have enough sort of excess to be able to still kind of correct it. So if you don't have a big squeegee like this, I definitely encourage you to grab this. This one is from Vinyl Gallery, and it's like my new favorite like craft tool because it makes getting vinyl on a complete breeze. It literally is the size of most of my cups, if not bigger, and it just allows me to make sure I'm getting everything on like seamlessly and straight, bubble free, and just, it's like my favorite thing. So after I've gotten that section of vinyl applied, I'm just gonna take my smaller squeegee and use the non-felted side to just sort of really make that divot between the tape line and the vinyl a little bit more apparent, so I can just use my craft knife to drag that along and clean up any of this excess vinyl that's overlapping on top of the painter's tape. So we're going to do that, of course, on both sides of the vinyl along the tape lines, and then we can go ahead and trim off any of the excess on the top and bottom portion of the cup. So easily here, the way that I just kind of remove the vinyl on top is just to pull it tautly either over the top rim or the bottom rim, making sure not to create any bubbles or wrinkles as you're pulling that section tautly, and then very carefully trim with a brand new craft knife in order to make sure that we get a nice crisp line and don't sort of get any crinkles or anything with a duller craft knife. So once this is removed, we're kind of good to go as far as the vinyl goes. So I didn't make a super perfect line at the bottom, but that's okay because I will be covering this bottom section off with tape anyway, because I'm going to remove the tape here, and upon removing the tape, because I didn't make sure to remove a little bit of the sticky off my tape, I did end up removing some of my paint. So I did have to go back and re-tape off all of my vinyl, and then go take this back to the spray tent to be able to respray it a flat white spray paint. Now, if I wasn't going to be using a white glitter, then I could have probably just glittered right over this and not had an issue, but because I was using white glitter, I knew that that stainless steel section would really show through, so I went and just did another coat of white spray paint. That way we can go ahead and add our glitter to this side of the cup. So now that I have that painted, we're gonna go into glittering here. And instead of using Mod Podge today, we're actually gonna do the tack it method. So I'm gonna add tack it over and over by a lean. You can get this at any craft store. It's meant to be a like stickier glue than traditional Mod Podge. If you have glitter glue or other glues that kind of do the same thing, you can certainly use this. You don't have to use this brand necessarily. I know there are other products out there that kind of do the same thing, but I'm going to apply a really nice coat of that tack it over and over. And then I'm a little impatient, so I always like to hit it with my heat gun and just kind of speed up the process to get it to that tacky phase. So now we're going to go ahead and apply our glitter. The glitter I'm using today is Daisy. This is from Maestra Creations. It's a beautiful pure white sparkly glitter, and we're going to use this as sort of our tack it method for this half of the cup. And so I'm going to get that covered, of course, from top to bottom, making sure that I have covered all the tack it on the cup. And then with my gloved hand, you don't have to use a glove, but I always prefer to use a glove. I'm just going to burnish or rub that glitter into that tack it glue. And this is really just going to allow that glitter to lay as flat as possible and give us this really beautiful, opaly, sparkly finish that I just really think looks so beautiful against this vinyl. So I'm going to pick up the rest of my glitter, add that to the pack of Daisy that I have there, and then we can go ahead and get into removing the tape off of this cup. That way we can get it on the turner for a coat of epoxy. So once I've removed the tape here, I am just going to go right into epoxy. I will brush off the vinyl just to make sure I don't have any glitter as I was burnishing down Daisy. Make sure that there isn't any glitter that's stuck to the vinyl, but we're going to go right into epoxy after this. I don't need to seal it or anything like that. It's such a fine glitter that even a little bit of glitter on that vinyl is really not going to be a big deal, but I did go in with about 30 mLs of Flynn Sisters Artist Cure epoxy. Let that cure, and now we're back off the turner to do our sanding routine. So I did only do one coat of epoxy. I really just wanted sort of a barrier between my glitter and my paint strokes so that the paint strokes don't sort of take up or show through any of that sort of textured glitter look when we add the paint to it. So we're going to come back after the epoxy, of course, and I'm going to tape off the vinyl again so I don't get any paint on that section, and then we're going to get into adding our brush strokes here. So I'm showing you 5 colors. I ended up only using 4 out of the 5. That last pink there, Diva, that I'm going to be putting on the paper that I'm using last. That one I ended up not using. So I originally thought that it would go well with it, and maybe if I had mixed it with a lighter pink, possibly, but once I started to sort of add the different brush strokes onto the cup, that color just seemed like it was going to kind of mess up the color palette I was working with, and so I decided to just negate and not include that sort of brighter pink there. So brush strokes I've done on my channel before, but we'll kind of go through this a little bit quickly. I am going to also show you kind of a repeat because we also do this over foil as well. So I use sort of like the big fluffy brushes, the makeup brushes you can get from the Dollar Tree, and you just do up and down motions on your cup in various sections. There's no real sort of tip or trick, just space it kind of all over wherever you feel like you want to add those. And then I dry them in between each brush stroke and then add a second layer on top before I move to the next color. So each section of color gets 2 coats of that brush stroke color before I move on to the next color, and you just continue to fill up the space until you are satisfied with the look. So of course, don't forget the bottom of your cup as well. That should get a little bit of paint as well. So I just added a few different of the brush strokes and paint down to the bottom of the cup as well. And what I did make sure to do is make sure that some of that glitter was still poking through, because of course we still want to be able to see some of that sparkle. And so not covering the entire cup in brush strokes was definitely key here. So I did let my cup dry for a little bit, and then we're back again, and we're back with our tack it again because we're gonna add some foil. So I have some pink foil here that I actually got from Hobby Lobby quite a while ago, and we're gonna add this as well to both the top and bottom of the cup here. So I'm just adding the tack it into the top section, just creating sort of like messy brush strokes along the top, and then I'll do the same with the bottom as well. I'll then of course hit it with my heat gun to speed up the drying process so it gets to that tacky phase that we need it to be so that we can add our foil and be able to get that foil to adhere to the cup. So once I'm satisfied and everything's in the tacky phase, I'm going to go ahead and add this first sheet of foil to the top half first. And so I just lay that right across that glued section. I then will take my squeegee tool and just sort of push all of that vinyl or all of that foil into that tacky glue underneath. I also like to hit it with a little bit of my heat gun as well, because that does allow it to stick a little bit better as well. Just a little bit of heat goes a long way. You don't need a whole lot. Again, going back with that squeegee, and then I'm ready to remove it and just remove that transfer sheet. So all of that foil will stick directly to your cup. And then we're going to repeat that same process with the bottom half of this section. So remember, we have glue down here as well. Same process here. We're just going to use that sheet of foil, burnish it down with a squeegee tool. I'll also hit it with a little bit of heat as well, just to get things to adhere and stick. Back again with that squeegee to sort of flatten everything out after the heat is applied, and then remove that top sheet so that the foil just stays there. So this is how it's looking like so far. I decided that I wanted to go back in and really have those brush strokes showcase over top of the foil. I think that I certainly could have gone in with the foil first and then maybe the brush strokes after, but I was able to sort of repaint over some of the foiled section just to bring out some of that color. I did it with all of the colors and just to sort of blend that foil a little bit better and really just sort of bring some of those colors back to the forefront, if that makes sense. So we are going to be covering up a lot of this with some decal, but I still wanted those colors to be present since we spent so much time doing all of that, of course, as well. So I just continued to go back and forth until I'm satisfied with the amount of brush strokes I have of the acrylic paint and the presence of the foil as well. I do love the addition of the foil and how it just gives, you know, an additional textured look to the cup. It really does come out really beautiful. And I think that if I would have had maybe all of the colors that I wanted in paint and foil, that also would have been a really cute look if I did sort of tack it brush stroke and then did the foil that way. Just another idea that kind of came to me when I was creating this originally. So now that I'm satisfied with that, we are kind of done with this process. So the last thing I'm going to do before I get this back on the turner again for another coat of epoxy is I'm going to add the vinyl striping now. So I have this sort of light purple metallic vinyl washi tape from Hobby Lobby. It's of course my favorite pack of washi tape that I always grab every time I'm at the craft store. But we're gonna go ahead and just use this to sort of frame out the vinyl here and really just separate the front half from the back half of the cup. So once I'm satisfied with that, I do add a little bit of polyacrylic over top of my washi tape line so I don't get any repelling in my coat of epoxy. Then this goes back on the turner for another coat of epoxy, and then I can go ahead and get my decals prepared. So today I'm using Hayes Paper Co. Their water slide decal paper. This is in clear. So I just printed this decal, which I created myself. It'll be available in my digital shop. I did go ahead and of course spray seal that with a few coats of clear gloss spray paint. And so while that is drying and we're waiting for that to be ready, we're going to go ahead and get our oval center decal applied. So I just took an oval shape out of Cricut Design Space, and then I created an offset for that and then sliced that with the smaller oval on top of the offset, giving me sort of this framed oval look that we're going for. So we're going to go ahead and layer this. So normally I don't like to layer on top of, the vinyl on my table. I've been layering on top of the cup, but I'm actually going to do a trick that is not a new trick by any means, but it's actually one I've never used. And so I'm going to be using parchment paper to help me layer this, because I knew that it would be rather difficult for me to be able to layer such a thin section of this oval shape over top of the smaller oval without there being some obvious gaps in spacing. So we're going to use a bit of parchment paper here, and I'm just going to kind of cut a rectangle off that I need, and I'm going to go ahead and actually use the pink outline or offset, and I'm going to apply that over my parchment paper. So with parchment paper, your transfer tape is not going to stick to the paper, like it's not going to get stuck to it, and it's not going to stick to the vinyl. It actually will peel quite nicely, but this will help you because you'll be able to see through the parchment paper to figure out where to get everything lined up so that you can make sure that it is lined up perfectly before you go ahead and sort of, smush the two pieces of vinyl together. Okay, so again, I've actually never tried this. This is like the oldest trick in the book when it comes to layering vinyl, and I've never done it. So you guys are seeing it first here. So now that I've gotten that layered and it's ready to go, we are back with our tumbler now that it is off the turner and fully cured again. And we're going to go ahead and measure the brushstroke side of the cup to determine what is going to be the halfway point of my tumbler so I can determine where I need to put the oval center decal. So in measuring my cup, it looked like this front half side was going to be about 5 inches, which means that my halfway marker is about 2.5. So I just made a sort of line at the top of the cup to represent where the center of this oval decal is going to go. That way I can just get everything lined up that way and not really have to worry about having to peel up this decal multiple times to get it placed correctly. So now that I have the measurement for the actual side of the cup and where this should be placed, I'm also going to find the center section of the decal we're going to be using and just kind of lay that out as well with a little bit of just a pen to mark that. That way it makes it a little bit easier to get my lines lined up and get this centered and placed on the cup. So going back in with my parchment paper just to help me line things up before I commit to sticking this, I'm going to just line things up on the cup, make sure that everything is evenly placed on either side and that everything is going to look right. I'm going to just kind of tape it down to make sure that it stays put, and then just kind of use the hinge method to be able to get the oval decal applied. This was definitely the easiest way to go for such a large decal that I was placing on the cup. I really thought that otherwise I probably would have had to cut this multiple times because you guys know me, I'm like a peel it and stick it and, hopefully it centered kind of person. And I really wanted to make sure that this did not go on wonky because it would not have been fun to have to pull it all back off and have to recut everything, of course. So I've gotten everything placed now, and the last thing I'm going to add is some of these floral decals. So these are from various floral decal sheets from Maestra Creations. I'll list the ones that I used down in the description box down below, but it's from quite a few sheets, just sort of the extra ones that I have kind of cut and just have in my sort of decal bundle or decal bin. That way I can use for other projects, but I'll list them. And so I am taking sort of these same colored florals that match the vinyl, and I'm just doing a little bit of layering here. I also found some light green leaves, which also kind of went with the Floral Book vinyl that is part of this cup as well. And then these are actually the exact same flowers from that vinyl as well. So I wanted that to kind of be the center on the bottom. So you certainly could, you know, choose to add the decals or not. I really just thought that it kind of added to this sort of book and floral look that I was kind of going for this design. So now we're ready for our waterslide decal, which is the final decal we'll need to get placed before this can go on the turner for final coats of epoxy. So this again was a digital decal that I created myself. I will have that listed down in the description box. This is printed on white or clear waterslide decal paper, and so we have that white backing just so that we can really make sure that this decal is going to be able to pop on the cup. So we're going to just dip that in some water. This is like room temperature water, and I'm going to apply some water, of course, to my surface as well to really make sure I have a slippery surface in order to get my waterslide decal applied to the cup. We're now going to very carefully slide that decal and slide the backing out from the back. And then we can begin to sort of squeegee out all of the water and make sure there's no water or air bubbles trapped under this. That way we get a really beautiful look in the final coats of epoxy. So taking my time, this is always the part of the process when doing a waterslide decal. You want to spend the most time, and that's squeegeeing out any air bubbles that might be under your decal or any water that might be trapped there, because when it begins to dry, it will shrink, and sometimes you'll be able to see those after your final coats of epoxy. So this is what it looks like after its final coat of epoxy, and so I am really in love with this cup. I am just so into book themed tumblers right now. This is like the second one for the channel, but I absolutely love it, and I hope that you guys too. So this is the final look for the cup. Of course, if you guys loved today's video, be sure to give today's video a huge thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I will be back again with another video soon. Bye!